All right, welcome to the final installment of my 5-part series on crafting a killer pitch deck. If you've watched the first 4 videos, hopefully they've been helpful to you. Let me know down in the comments what you've thought so far and what you think of this video. If they've been helpful, please like and subscribe. Helps me, get good feedback and hopefully promote the channel to other people that could use this content. In this installment, we're gonna talk about bringing it all home, getting the deal closed. Now, the first thing I wanna talk about is if you've done this right, you've watched my other videos, you've teed up all these other pieces, this can be the part where you just close it all out, get the commitment to keep digging into diligence and hopefully get to an investment decision. What that means is you had your pain point. You made the investor get emotionally involved, right? In that pain point, like they've been able to empathize, truly empathize with your customer. You then provided them with some real relief when you explained what your solution is and how it really solves all the pain points that that customer or client's been facing. And then you've demonstrated how you are the ones to really solve the pain point. This last section is all about the closing. And really it's all about taking the investor along this journey and bringing them home from like the lows of feeling the pain point to feeling better about the solution to getting excited about investing in your company. And then we're gonna close them on a high. So let's talk about how to do that. Okay, so you're bringing it home. You're gonna wanna have your projections. Now, your projections are one of those things where it's like, it's one of those necessary evils. Like VCs, they're gonna look at your hockey stick of growth, right? And they're immediately gonna probably like discount it to a certain extent, but it's also like one of those things where it's like, well, if you don't have a hockey stick of growth, right? If you're not forecasting something amazing, then do I really want to invest? Like if you don't even believe this can be big, then why should I believe it can be big? So that's the necessary evil of it. That said, I think there are ways to do it that provide more usefulness, more credibility, et cetera. And that's what we're going to cover today. So the objective here is to demonstrate the upside of the opportunity that you're presenting and to do it in a way that has some realism attached to it, right? You're not just like, hey, like let's grow this thing to the moon without like good substantial backup for that that's based in reality. But if you can do that, if you can show like, hey, using conservative estimates, we think that this can become a really big business. It might take us a little bit longer than what we're forecasting, but the outcome is still possible and it's still there, then that's great. And I'll tell you, like the very best investments I've ever made are companies that like they threw up a hockey stick on their forecast and their projections on their pitch deck, and they actually hit it. So like for me, it's kind of like, well, at least you're swinging for the fences, and if you hit it, like it's not outside the realm of possibility that you could achieve that outcome. Just some guidance, show that investors' expected returns are possible, right? Like I'm shooting for a 10 to 20x. Show me that it's possible for me to generate a 10 to 20x. And then use realistic assumptions to back up what you're forecasting. Pitfalls, like charts without info, without enough information to know exactly what they're forecasting. Like I remember this one entrepreneur I met with, I was like, hey, can you show me your revenue traction to date? And he sent me a graph, and he had like, it was just a graph that like went up and to the right, and it didn't have any axes on it. So I didn't know. I was like, what am I even looking at here, right? And he was like notorious for this. And I was just like, I wish you wouldn't have sent me anything because this is garbage, it's worthless. The other pitfall I see is like they use unrealistic expectations, or they're like, oh, if we just get 1% of the market, like we'll be a huge business. The problem is that like 1% of the market doesn't tell you anything about how hard it is to acquire customers, service those customers, retain those customers, right? It's just like assuming that because 1% sounds like a small number, then it must be easy to get. But if you actually like break that number down, it's like, well, if it's a $10 billion market, then, hey, we operate within, we're going to do $100 million. Well, $100 million is a lot of money, right? And all of a sudden it doesn't sound like such a small number anymore. So just some examples. Ideally, show more than just revenue. Show like maybe some costs, show some assumptions that are really driving your model, and so that I can get a better feel for how realistic these forecasts actually are. ideally keep it really simple. I'm not going to dive into the details of this, but what I really want to take away is like, you can generate a big return and grow this thing to be really big, and that forecast is realistic. It's within the realm of possibility. If you can do those two things, like, you have checked the box for these slides. And then, of course, like, I love combining actuals with forecasts and projections, because sometimes companies will like not include the actuals because they don't like how they look and they can't manipulate them as well as they can the forecast. And VCs know this. And so when they don't see like historicals, they're already starting to like, it's like a red flag and they're starting to question. And so ideally you want to be able to include those actuals and be able to demonstrate like, hey, this is just like an inevitable increase over time. We've been doing it forever. And, you know, just using like very conservative assumptions based on our historical performance, we think we can achieve this, right? Like, that type of analysis and presentation goes a long way. The last thing that pulls your whole deck together is the ask. It's like this quote from Glengarry Glen Ross, where he's like, only one thing counts in this life. Get them to sign on the line which is dotted. You hear me? A, B, C. Always be closing. Always be closing. Always be closing. So many entrepreneurs, they have their pitch deck and they're like, they go through all of this stuff and you get to the end and you're like, and they're like, well, thank you for the time. And I'm like, but what? Like, what? Like, I'm all excited. I'm all excited to invest, but what are you proposing? Right? And there's not an ask. So you got to bring it home. You got to have the ask. The ask is really just like giving the information around how you're thinking about like how much money you need to raise, why you need to raise it, and from where it's going to come from, right? So that could be like, hey, we've done our analysis. In order to hit the financials that we just showed you, we're going to need to raise $10 million, right? And we're going to spend it in these specific areas, which will allow us to achieve this outcome. And by the way, like, we've already secured, you know, this much from our inside investors, and we need to get this much more from new investors. And, you know, maybe you even include detail around like, we think like this percent is going to come from the lead investor, this from follow-on investors, this from inside investors, right? Or whatever it might be. Or maybe you have some strategics that are interested, right? As you're fundraising and you're collecting more commitments, like, include that in your pitch deck, because it's going to build FOMO. It's going to provide like some proof that like what you're doing is interesting to other people that are investing. So that can be like a really helpful element of it. Guidance. So include the security. Are you raising a SAFE, a convertible note, a priced Series A, Series B, whatever that is? So talk about that. That should be pretty obvious and easy. Talk about the amount of money that you need, use of the proceeds, key milestones that you anticipate hitting with that money. That will be important, because investors will be like, all right, if this money is going to allow them to hit this milestone, do I believe that milestone is enough for them to raise the next round of capital that they're going to need to continue growing? And then talk about, you know, investors that are committed, like I talked about. Some pitfalls: too much information. They're just drowning in information. Like, and that's a pitfall for every single one of the slides in your deck, is just like putting in too much information so that investors are reading instead of listening to what you have to say. You should be like doing most of the presentation, and talking most and providing most of the data. Your deck really should be like just cementing in their minds the key points you want them to take home. Other pitfalls, like setting a valuation. I don't really recommend setting a valuation at this stage. You can say things like, you know, look, we're raising a Series A. We're looking to sell 20 to 30% of the business, as is typical, you know, but we're accepting term sheets from multiple people and really looking for the best partner possible. So like you can kind of give some guidance there of what you're looking for without coming out and like putting a stake in the ground. And the reason for that is because sometimes VCs will be like, oh, well, like that's too expensive. Like they're just raising too much money at too high a valuation. I'm out, right? That's not really what you want to do. Or vice versa. They could be like, they're not raising enough money at a high enough valuation. Like, this is probably not a fit. Like, you want to kind of leave it open and then let the VC decide, how excited they are about it. And then you can start the negotiation process. You just don't want to like kill anything too early at this stage. And then the last one is including investors that aren't committed. So sometimes I've seen companies that they'll like be like, oh yeah, like XYZ companies, is potentially going to invest. And then I call up XYZ fund because I know them, right? It's more likely that I'm going to know them and have a better relationship with them than you are, right? Especially if they're another institutional VC. And they're like, oh yeah, like we met with them once, but I don't think we're going to do anything there, right? So like, don't let that like fall on you. Instead, you should be like, oh yeah, you could say like, we met with these firms and we have follow-ups, right? Or XYZ firm is in diligence, they're in the data room, right? Give me some guidance that's a little more concrete, but just be really careful about like overstating the level of commitment from your investors. Here are some slides. I think, as you can tell, like they're very simple and straightforward. It's, hey, we're raising a Series B. This is how much money we're raising. Here are the milestones that we're going to try and hit during this time period, right? They include the security, the amount, prior rounds. Sometimes they'll include like, hey, we raised, a $1.2 million seed round from these individuals in the past, right? Keep it really simple. Gives the information that the investor needs, which is like how much you're raising, what round, maybe some level of guidance in terms of where you are in the process, and then follow up, right? Be like, okay, when can we chat again? When can I, let us know how we can get you access to the data room, let us know what your process is, et cetera, et cetera. Just in closing tips, make sure that the deck looks good. Oftentimes, like I'll meet with entrepreneurs and it's clear like they haven't put that much time into like really like designing a great deck. And in today's day and age, there's so many tools out there to make your deck look awesome that there's really like no excuse. And you don't need to spend a fortune on it either, right? Find some of these firms that will do a good job helping you prepare that deck. Use them. Canva is a great tool, even if, you got to go off of your own design skills. They've got a lot of tools that can make it easy. There's really no excuse to not having like a good looking deck in this day and age. Don't waste time on the obvious stuff, right? Like sometimes like entrepreneurs will include stuff in there where it's like, yeah, duh. Like they'll include like the market for mobile apps is like $10 trillion. And it's like, yeah, I know the market for mobile apps is really big, right? That's obvious. Don't waste my time on something like that when you could be spending the time on something more valuable to the conversation. Make sure you're like educating them, telling them a story. Like for me, one of the reasons I love meeting with entrepreneurs is because I learn about new industries and markets and business models. And to me, that's like really fulfilling, especially like because I'm a very intellectually curious person. And I would argue that most VCs are intellectually curious people. Like they love to learn. So educate us, teach us something really cool. Tell a story, use few words on your presentation, and know your audience. And what I mean by that is be able to anticipate the objections that they're going to have early so that you can resolve those objections before they even ask them. Because oftentimes VCs, like, we don't want to be jerks, right? There's no reward for being a jerk in VC. And so sometimes like we'll have really strong objections and we decide to like kill the deal and we don't ever actually ask them or raise them. And so entrepreneurs are like kind of lost. But if in many cases the entrepreneur would like sit back and like think through what some of those objections could be because they really know their audience and they've really like tried to empathize with them, they can usually solve a lot of those potential objections earlier on when they're just telling the overall story. Anyways, I really hope that this course, for lack of a better word, this series of videos has been helpful as you're crafting your pitch deck. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Has it been helpful or not? If you haven't watched the other videos, please go back and watch videos 1, 2, 3, 4 that I've put out. And I guess lastly, if you know a founder that's raising and this can be helpful, please send the videos along and have them check them out. Thanks so much for watching.